your pitches, and we'll put you in the lineup for our seminar. So next up, we have one of our own committee members, Kris Meen. Hi. Kris is currently an academic skills and communication and engagement librarian in NUI Galway. Kris has worked as a librarian at, how will I say that, Kris?
Coach.
Don't want to say that wrong. University, where he was involved in information literacy instruction and library communications. Kris also worked in industry in Canada, where he held the post of business librarian, working as part of the information service team. Originally from Canada, Kris relocated to Ireland in 2013, and he's here with his wife and 2 small kids, and we're delighted to welcome him here. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Stephanie. She said it already. My name is Kris Meen. I'm an academic skills librarian at the James Hardiman Library at NUI Galway. I'm here to talk about a blended generic academic skills tutorial that I've been starting to put on at the library. If you're not sure what blended is a combination of online learning and face-to-face or classroom learning. So what I'm actually going to do is start with a demo of the face-to-face classroom portion of that tutorial. And this portion of the tutorial involves thinking about information over time. So the different kinds of information and the different sources of information that emerge, in particular after a significant event, that emerge over different stages of time after that event. So the significant event I'm going to be talking about is the very tragic and fairly recent demise of Michael Jackson, who passed away on June 25th, 2009, just about 6 years ago today. Can anybody recall where it is that they found out about this happening? Yes, we have some nodding heads. How about at the back there? Where did you hear that this happened? You were in France. Oh, that's wonderful. Did you learn in a French newspaper or how did you find out about it? Oh, somebody told you face to face. Okay, that's tremendous. Anybody else recall? Twitter. Okay, so somebody heard over Twitter. So you heard it over Twitter, and certainly. We know that in the first few minutes, the first few hours, the first few seconds after a significant event takes place, very often, this is where we will find out about something initially. So apparently, the word first got out about Michael Jackson on a blog. This was passed on to some other blogs, tweeted out on Twitter, etc., etc., etc. Now you notice the slide here has a delightful shade of blue. And I handed out some blue cards earlier. With the person with the blue card with the question on it, please read out the question out loud, please. How accurate do you think the information in social media is? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Connell, it looks like you're thinking about this pretty hard. Do you have any?
Yeah, I'd say it wasn't too accurate, maybe 5 years ago. But I think it's pretty accurate today now, yeah.
Okay, so it's getting better and better, sure. Okay, there's a person with a blank blue card out there. That gentleman right there. Do you have any thoughts on this particular question?
I think as more and more they become multinationals and big corporations, Google or whatever, I trust them less and less.
Okay. Some competing answers there. That's very interesting. Okay, tremendous. Thank you for those. Okay, so those are the first few minutes, the first few hours after something takes place, after an event. So the next place you'll find things likely in the first day or so after an event are in major newspapers. So here we have a major newspaper. If I were to click on this particular link, it would take me to some of the newspaper articles that emerged over the course of the day after Michael Jackson died. Somebody has a yellow card with a question on it. Would you care to please read out the question on that? I see it standing up right there. Yes. Our newspaper. Oh, right. Our newspaper articles scholarly sources. Why or why not? Okay, there's some conversation going on. Good, that's good. Somebody out there has a blank yellow card. Would you care to share your thoughts, Bernice?
They can be of rare articles if they get an academic to actually write the article.
That's a very good point.
They want to specialise
Good answer.
But in general, no, that's my understanding. They're not scholarly articles.
Okay. Great answer. So in general, no, they're not scholarly articles. Not written by scholars. They're written by journalists who are not scholars. They're very smart, very intelligent people, but they aren't necessarily scholars. But sometimes newspapers, you're absolutely right, do get articles written by scholars. Is that a scholarly source? Good question. Let's move on. So demo over. If you have another colored card, you can relax. I'm just going to stop now. But there are 3 further colored slides. So I go on to the week after an event and talk about magazines. Move on to the month or so after the event. We talk about some more in-depth reportage, documentaries that might be coming out. And then finally, the green slide is the one where we get to some academic sources. So in the year and then years following an event, we get academic publishing coming out. And I talk about the reasons why it takes a certain amount of time for this academic stuff to come out. This is not my activity. I did not come up with this. This I got from an article called Tracing Information Over Time by Zan Goodman, who's a librarian at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas, in this book called Teaching Information Literacy Threshold Concepts, which is a very useful one I have found so far. Okay, so whenever I'm putting together an information literacy session, I'm trying to think about a number of things going on in my sort of external environment. So on the one hand, the big circle on the top right there, it says trends in information literacy. So what's going on in information literacy? So one of the things that's going on is the recent publication of the Framework for Information Literacy by the American College and Research Libraries. So that involves a short series of frames, what they're calling frames, and that's based on the notion of the threshold concept. And the threshold concept is a very sort of, in any particular discipline, it's the idea that in any discipline there are a few very central concepts that are difficult to grasp, that students really have to spend a lot of time struggling over. And it's as they sort of struggle through that kind of bottleneck that they actually learn the most about the discipline. So that's influential. There's a lot of talk about blended learning. So this is again that combination between online and face-to-face learning. So that's involved here. Trends in Ireland at NUI Galway. So there is a sort of push towards academic skills as a means of making sure that or improving student performance within the university, as well as after having some. In terms of promoting the skills they need on the job market after they get out of university. And then the cohort core characteristics. So this was, in fact, I delivered this to a final year engineering class in the context of a lifelong learning module. So it was a generic skills module that I embedded this session into. And then some specific details about that class. There were 40 students, which I actually divided into 20. So it was 20 students in 2 tutorial sections at a computer-enabled space. 1 hour session in module integration. Okay, so the 1 hour time there, I forgot to mention that. Okay, so we went through those colored slides. That's actually only the first part of the face-to-face activity. What I followed that up with is students are actually put into groups that are then handed out some topics on little cards that are other notable events, and they're also given 2 other little cards with numbers on them that equate to the 5 stages through time. So if you get a 1, that means you need to look for some information about the event that you've been given in social media, for example. And then I get them to search for some sources according related to the stages of time that they've been assigned, as well as their topic. And then they come and present on what sources they found and how it is that they found those sources. So that's why it takes an hour to go through that. It doesn't take an hour to go through 5 slides. It does take a while, though, if we get a good discussion going. These are the ACR threshold concepts. These are the 6 threshold concepts, and the ones that are involved here is information creation as a process. And then an ancillary one is authority is constructed and contextual. So that's the sort of the face-to-face component. This is actually, in terms of blended learning, this is specifically a flipped model where I had them do some online work before coming into the class to get some of that sort of preparatory work done so that they can come and we have time to do kind of a student-centered, sort of focused, task-based activity. And what I wound up using was kind of an older resource that we've had around for a while that we called LARC. which is an online information skills tutorial. It goes over some of the basics of information literacy, searching, different kinds of sources, et cetera, et cetera. And this is one of the visuals from it, and this is one of the reasons why I thought this exercise went well together. So this is your sort of standard grab bag of sources that you might see in any information literacy session. With the, thinking about the sources over time is a way of sort of thinking about the way it patterns out over time, and thus triangulating new sources in an interesting kind of way. So but the problem that we've had with LARC in the past is that students don't necessarily go to it on their own. So of course, this was embedded in a module, which meant that they were more likely to go to it, but I directly embedded it into Blackboard, which was our institution's virtual learning environment. I also attached a multiple choice question to it in Blackboard. And then I attached a digital badge to that, so that if they answered the question, if they got 6 out of 9 correctly and came to my session, they got a digital badge. So yep, the results were pretty good overall. They had good engagement both online and in the classroom. So the students were pretty well engaged. You'll see that the cards actually sort of force you to engage even if you don't want to. The online environment, I can actually keep track of how students go in, how many times they click into LARC, for instance. So I knew that they all did the multiple choice quiz and they all did reasonably well on it. But I could also see that all the students in the class actually clicked into LARC at least 2 times and up to as many as 8 times. So I thought that was pretty good, a pretty good sign of good engagement with the online resource. There's good peer-to-peer learning in the classroom. Of course, this was done in groups, so that was good. They were engaged with the activity that they were doing. There was also some good instances of shoulder-to-shoulder learning. So when they came up and presented, for instance, one fellow, when he was showing us how he was finding what he found in social media, went to the advanced search functions of Twitter, which I actually didn't know existed. So that was good. He sort of taught me and the rest of his peers about that particular facility. There were some interesting, useful ethnographic findings. So they already had a sense of some social media, for instance, that were reliable versus ones that weren't. Most of the people in the class thought that Facebook was a reliable source. On the other hand, I didn't think that Snapchat was a reliable source. So I don't know why that is, but it was an interesting way of starting a conversation about why we think of different sources as reliable or accurate, and that we could bring into some sources that they weren't necessarily as familiar with. So in the future, so I was reasonably successful. I'd like to try it some more. I'd like to roll this out to some of the other subject contexts. So I'm now the subject steer for all of arts and humanities and social sciences as well as business. So I'd like to try it in all of those sorts of contexts to see how that goes. I'd like to pilot it in a train-the-trainer context. So scalability is always on my mind. So what I'd like to try to do is to train graduate students to actually deliver this sort of activity in a flipped environment, so that we can deliver it to more and more students. So thank you for those time signals. I'm actually done. Yes, there's some works cited and some further resources. Thanks very much.